This is Megan Thompson's Portfolio Defense for the Graduate Certificate in History program at Minnesota State University, Mankato. My faculty panel today is Dr. Lallam, Dr. Corley, and Dr. McCutcheon. Thanks to the three of you for being here and for all of your support throughout the program. I've learned a great deal from the way you run your courses and from your feedback on my assignments. So thank you for being here today. I wanted to start by providing a little bit of context about my background and how it is that I came to be defending my portfolio in front of you today. I started off at the University of Iowa and earned a degree in history with a minor in Spanish and completed the social studies teacher education program there and did honors projects both for my history degree and for the teacher education program. And I think that those honors projects are really where I learned the love that I have for reading and for writing and for helping others to develop those as well. The World War II project that I had also really had a personal component to it because I went to my advising professor and told him that I wanted to use all of these primary sources, all these artifacts that I had from my grandfather, who was a signalman in World War II on the USS Enterprise. And my professor offered to allow me to take a look at his father's memorabilia from World War II, which is basically boxes upon boxes of letters. And he said that if I organized them for them, I could use them as much as I wanted in my paper. And so I got to write a paper that included the perspective of a man who was in the Navy and who grew up in a place that was called Lone Tree, Iowa, with a tiny population and no stoplights in the town, and compare that experience to a Jewish New Yorker who was stationed in Europe in the Army. And to be able to compare and consider those was really valuable. And I think I learned really high quality research skills there, but I didn't know how to synthesize them into high quality writing yet. I think the grammar and the syntax of my writing was fine, but that I hadn't yet learned how to truly use that information to develop an argument. I was just reporting at that point rather than truly synthesizing. And I think that's what Mankato has really helped me to develop, not only in myself, but help me learn how to teach that to students. Like, what are the things that really click and help to really show the difference between basic understanding and analysis. When I began teaching, it was in an 8th grade social studies classroom. It was early American history just outside Philadelphia, which is the best place in the world to teach early American history. And in the summers, I could go to National Endowment for the Humanities workshops literally by walking up to Independence Hall. And so that created really a love for the Constitution and the Constitutional Convention. And that drives a lot of the government classes that I teach. And so it's this balance between loving world history and wanting to hold on to those classes, but also having this love for the Constitution. So I do teach a lot of courses, but it's something that I love to do. And so that's a voluntary thing. I then moved to Minneapolis with my husband after he finished law school in Philadelphia and began teaching at Minnetonka High School, which is an elite high school, I think that's fair to say, where the vast majority of students have two college-educated parents who are at home. They have a strong IB program, and what I learned there is that in an IB course, the teacher gets to choose a few topics that they cover really in depth, very much like a college course, very much like all of the courses that I took at Mankato. And so I got to choose these topics that we would spend months talking about. We got to spend 2 months on the French Revolution, whereas in AP World History that I teach now, it's a paragraph in our textbook. And so it helped me learn for the first time how to select materials that I wanted to use rather than just here's the textbook. I could really dive into other resources, and especially with my unit on social life in Victorian England, I really saw how students could excel when they're given primary sources that are within their grasp. And so when we were looking at lower and middle class life in Victorian England, we could look at journals and letters, and students could see what it was like to work in a mine or to work in a factory during this era, and to see how much they enjoyed that really opened up new possibilities for what I could do in the classroom. Right now I teach at Osseo Senior High School, which is a very diverse school. It's a majority population. A lot of our students are first-generation college students. We have a significant number of Hmong students, of students from Liberia, from Ghana, Nigeria, and so it makes for a really beautiful cultural dynamic there. And so I try to bring that into the classroom as much as possible and to educate myself about it as much as possible. I advise a couple of activities in part because I want to learn how to develop students as leaders and become strong adults. And I think that's what I do in the classroom as well, is I want to help them become critical thinkers. And I hadn't had to really explain my teaching philosophy in a long time until this program, and some of the reflection that we did as part of the alternate plan paper really helped me to think about that again. What is my goal in the classroom? And I think it's to help our students become critical thinkers and to become discerning citizens, and not just to take whatever it is that they hear and swallow it, but to really consider it and make educated decisions. My next step is, as I know at least Dr. Corley and Dr. Lallam are aware, I won the James Madison Fellowship for the state of Minnesota. So that's pretty exciting that it's going to pay for me to get my next degree, which will be in government and citizen, or government and the Constitution, or political science, or something along those lines, so that hopefully I can teach concurrent enrollment government classes at the high school next. I really want to bring on as many opportunities as I can for my students to earn college credit, knowing that they struggle financially in a lot of cases. And so if I can help to send them off to college with, basically their first semester already done with, that would be a pretty powerful thing. Next year, we have 3 sections of students signed up to teach concurrent enrollment world history. My colleague Jerry Zelenak is going to be doing 2 sections of concurrent enrollment U.S. history. And we're pairing with North Hennepin really just because they got back to us faster, and we would love to work with Mankato in the future. We think that would be a really powerful experience for students to work with a 4-year institution. And so we're hoping for 2020 that we'll be able to make that work. I'm heading to Seattle this summer for a workshop at the Wing Luke Museum on the Asian Pacific American experience, and so I hope to be able to tie that into some of my classes next year as well. And then I'll be starting off on my next graduate degree, and most likely at Ashland University. I need to verify that it's going to work with all the concurrent enrollment stuff that I want. But everything I've learned at Mankato has really laid the groundwork for me to be a really critical thinker and reader and learner and colleague with the other 51 people who received the fellowship. So I think that Mankato played a big role in that success, also because Dr. Cooley wrote my recommendation for that. So I think that is a helpful component of it as well. So my program at Mankato, as you see here, my graduate certificate coursework basically was taking advantage of all of the online classes that I possibly could, and really enjoying what those offerings were, and going back to some of the things that I learned a lot about in my undergrad, like the classical world of Greece and Rome and modern Middle East. I literally used a textbook that I had used in my undergrad, just an updated edition, which was really curious to see what some of those differences were. And I'm loving my class with Dr. McCutcheon because it dives into things that I think we skim over far too much in history. And what's been really valuable about it is I've started to understand a little bit of more why it is that it gets skimmed over, because there are so many questions, and it's such a work in progress that I think that textbooks maybe just push it off to the side because they're worried that the historians are going to think something new in a year and then their textbook is going to be outdated. But it makes it an incredibly interesting area to learn about. So with the alternate plan paper, there were 3 outcomes that we were looking at. Outcome A, 1A, 1B, and 2. And so for the first one, analyzing primary and secondary sources, I really think that my work looking at the 12 Caesars and taking on the perspective of Athanasius in the classical world course helped me to consider the value of primary sources and to be critical of them especially. And I liked that idea of using simulations to help students become critical thinkers and to be critical of historical sources, because when they're forced to take on those motives themselves, then they start to realize that yeah, people lied in history too, and they manipulated people in history too, and sometimes we think that that's a modern development in some way. In the Modern Middle East course, I got to develop my own DBQ, and so I was the one who was selecting the sources, and so I really got to think about what my students would connect to, what would help them understand, and get that feedback as to what would help them learn best. As for secondary sources, the civil rights course that I took had some really great full texts that we read that went along with our traditional textbooks. So The Rebellious Life of Rosa Parks, The New Jim Crow, and Up Against a Wall, which is about the Black Panther Party, were these full books that we would read and really were fantastic deep dives into the course material. Then for Dr. McCutcheon's class, whenever we write our analysis papers, we have the opportunity to go out and bring in a lot of secondary sources. And so I've enjoyed that a lot. Dr. McCutcheon may have noticed that I have enough sources to probably write a 15-page paper rather than a 3 to 5-page paper, because I just really enjoy the research component of it and pulling the little snippets from secondary sources that I'm able to using Mankato's library system, basically finding articles through that from scholarly sources to support my arguments. And then finally, bringing all of those things into synthesis and analysis. As I mentioned earlier, I think in my undergrad I was good at the research component, so I was really good at outcome A, maybe outcome 1, but not outcome 2. And so that's something that I really developed in a very conscious way, and the alternate plan paper course has really helped me to reflect on that and to think about how I can help my students to do that better as well. The thing I'm most proud of in the entire program is my Obergefell versus Hodges paper for the civil rights course. And that showed me the power of being able to choose what it is that I researched. Dr. Cooley gave us some suggestions if we didn't have an idea of what we wanted to talk about, but if we had an idea, we could just run with it. And I spent months really loving reading about the history of LGBT rights in the United States, and knowing how excited my students would be to learn about what I had found out was something that really drove me as well. And it also helped me to push to bring in historical context for my government classes. So having John F. Kennedy speak about prayer in school in response to Engel versus Vitale, when he's asked by the press how he feels that the court has just said that there can't be mandatory prayer in schools. Before, it would have just been, okay, here's the result of the case. And now I'd ask students to think about, why is Kennedy in particular a president that people would be interested to hear how he feels about prayer in school? What is going on around the time of John F. Kennedy that might really impact things like prayer in school and the Pledge of Allegiance in school? Being able to do some of that deeper analysis. And then the fact that his answer to the question is so beautifully political, where he says, we can all pray at home, and this is a reminder to pray at home as much as possible. And some people will agree with the court and some people will disagree with the court. And he does such a wonderful job of avoiding actually taking a stance on it and not criticizing the court, because it's very much a traditional interpretation of how the president and the court should be. Obviously, that's changed within the past 10 years or so. But it helps students to really understand the case at a much deeper level. And so I'm going to continue to do that in my government classes as well as in my world history classes. And all of this really supports the conclusion that I have on the front page of my portfolio, that it's important that we help students and help adults to become educated and to be powerful citizens who are equipped with knowledge and with critical thinking skills that can help them to read something critically and to draw conclusions of their own rather than just accepting conclusions that are presented to them. So I hope that I've showed my competency in those areas, and I hope that I can help my students to develop those competencies as well. So thank you for your time, for your support in this program, and I look forward to working with Mankato in the future, hopefully as one of your teachers in the concurrent enrollment program. Thank you.